Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Teacup for One Stephen Sondheim musical marathon. I don't have my teacup. Hold on. I'll just hold up this half, mostly drank bottle of Diet Coke. My name is Matt, and I have 2 degrees, and it's week 3 of talking about Stephen Sondheim musicals, or should I say meowsicals, because it looks like the only people watching right now are my cats. Eliza says, "Meow, Matthew. How long is the Sondheim marathon going to last?" Eliza, this is the second last week. So we're talking about Assassins tonight. Oh, spoiler warning, we're talking about Assassins. Next week, we're talking about Into the Woods. And then we move into June with a marathon that I'm so thrilled for. It's a nostalgic favorite. It's leading up to one of the cinema events of the year. Let's see if you can guess what the next one's going to be. I might have even said it before, but anyway. And my other cat, Sabrina's here. Hello, humans. Hello, cat. How are you? So today we are talking, as I said, about Stephen Sondheim's Assassins. This is a musical that was written in the early 90s. I don't have the research with me to tell you the exact year, but it was the 90s. There we go. And kind of like last week's musical, like Company, and also kind of like Sunday in the Park with George, it's another pseudo concept musical where there's no coherent narrative necessarily. It's more about a series of ideas and characters coming together in this sort of limbo neutral space. It's very strange. It's very powerful. And yeah, there's a lot to say. There's a lot to say about it. Essentially, it's kind of like if you took if you took the majority of individuals in history who have either successfully or attempted to assassinate a US president and then put them in a room together and got them to sing about it, that's what this musical is. There's other stuff too, but we'll dive into that. We'll dive into that. Let's bring in our first guest for this evening. I think this is her first time here for the Sondheim musical marathon. It's Jeanette, everybody.
I made it. I'm here making my Sondheim premiere.
Welcome. Oh, I'm so excited to have you. So, favorite president.
Oh, favorite president? Okay. Okay. Well, I think if you had asked me that when I was growing up, like as a little kid, I would have said Andrew Jackson, which is wrong for a lot of reasons now in hindsight. But you're raised in the South and you're like, he was cool. He let people party in the White House. So that's what you're taught. Yeah, you're there. He let the common man in. He had parties. There was like beer on the lawn and like stuff like that, right?
I know none of this. I'm a Canadian. Tell me more.
Yeah, so he was cool. I mean, there's a few atrocities. I think I'm not sure.
There always are.
It's unclear. Is he canceled? Is he not? I don't know.
The further back you go,
yeah. Conventionally, now I would say Obama.
Yeah, good choice.
It's pretty easy choice.
Yeah, I think my choice would be Obama, but also Biden, just because right person at the right time to make me feel calm again.
Yeah, any period to end that sentence.
Yes,
would be great.
So great. Just having a quiet president that I don't really need to keep track of as your northern neighboring country.
I was going to say, as the neighbor to the north, I'm sure that's comforting.
Yes, indeed. And since this is your first time here for the musical marathon, what is your favorite musical? Or are you a musical person? I'm not sure.
I am. Yes, okay. I am. But you mean musical at all or Sondheim musical?
Either or both.
Okay. I mean, musical at all, I would say right now, it's probably Heathers.
Good.
I mean, I kind of stay on that one pretty solidly. I did just see 6, and that's very high up.
Don't lose your head.
Yeah, so that's there. And then I think favorite Sondheim is Into the Woods. No. Sweeney Todd is Sondheim.
Oh, okay.
It's Sweeney Todd. It's Sweeney Todd.
Okay, it's a good choice. Yeah. Josh Groban.
I gotta see that iteration. It's the newest one. Yes,
it's the one that's there right now. Josh and Annalee Ashford. Yeah,
I gotta see it.
Yeah, they're icons. Brilliant. All right, let's bring in our next guest for this evening. He's been on the channel a bunch in the past, but it's been so long, so I am so excited to welcome back to the channel, all the way from somewhere in Florida, Chris from Orlando.
Oh, hey, Matt.
Hey, Chris.
Wait, what?
Yeah. It's me.
Am I in a camera frame?
Yeah.
You're on frame. Chris from Orlando?
Yeah, it's Chris from Orlando.
God, I'm back on YouTube, aren't I?
You're back on YouTube.
Oh God, this is just like the trope in like sequel movies where they have to get that one guy out of retirement. He's at his cabin, he's chopping log. I even got the facial hair for this now.
What have you been up to, Chris? Where have you been?
Well, where I've been is actually very appropriate for the topic at hand today. I've just been very busy with my own actual acting career, doing like a bunch of musicals, and it's just eating up my life. So, unfortunately, Chris from Orlando has had to been put on pause indefinitely. But since I stopped, I've done like 8 different shows.
Nice.
I've been very busy.
Were any of them Sondheim? Did you do a Sondheim show?
I have not done a Sondheim show this year. I've done Urinetown, Addams Family, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Jesus Christ Superstar, and Candlelight at Epcot, as well as a couple other shows here and there.
Nice.
But no
Thrilling.
Sondheim. Yeah.
It's-
I have done Into the Woods in the past, but that's the only Sondheim shows I've ever done.
I didn't know that, or maybe I did. Were you Jack?
I was not Jack. I was the steward.
Maybe I knew that, but I forgot. Well, I know that now. Brilliant. Well,
Yeah.
here's some more Sondheim in everybody's future. Same question I posed to Jeanette. Who's your favorite president?
My favorite president, I'm going to say this for the memes, Martin Van Buren, because that hair.
Is that a president? What?
Yeah.
I've never heard that name in my life.
And he has like one of those like super old timey hairstyles. It's just like wrap around the head, bald hair. Like look him up. Like put him up on this. Martin Van Buren.
Well, I want to find his robot from Hall of Presidents.
That's the most relevant.
Yes, exactly. Martin Van.
Frankly, the best hairstyle of any president.
There we go. Oh, he's number
Oh, yeah,
8.
he's
That's
got,
so
like, the
far-
mutton
that's so
chop.
far
He's
back.
super early on.
He's the mutton chop man.
He is the mutton chop man. Do you
He
know
always
the mutton chop
the
man?
mutton chop.
The
He
mutton chop
reminds
man?
me of the grandfather from House of a Thousand Corpses. Is what he reminds me of.
Okay, I can see it.
That's
I
a
can see
reference.
it. And favorite musical, Chris?
My favorite musical. That's such a tricky choice, but I'll go with the musical that has my dream role of dream roles, The Book of Mormon.
Oh yes.
Which
nice.
elder? Wait, Cunningham.
Cunningham.
Price? Cunningham. Okay. Good
Cunningham.
choice. Good choice. Good choice.
Of
Good
course.
choice.
Good,
The
very
nerd.
good choice.
I love that show. I adore that show. And favorite
Mhm.
Sondheim? Is it Into the Woods?
Favorite Sondheim, I also gotta go with Sweeney Todd.
Interesting. I almost feel like I should have just done a second round of Sweeney Todd for this whole marathon.
Referencing all the Sondheim stuff and not the Johnny Depp stuff.
Yes, precisely. Precisely. All right. Well, today we are talking about assassins, and I'm happy to be the sole Canadian on this chat. So let's talk about your country and all the, and all the
Right.
craziness
Do
that's
we
going on
have
down
to?
there. Yes. Okay. So was this anyone's first time watching or being exposed to this show?
Yes.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Jeanette and no. Okay.
I first heard the original, the revival soundtrack.
The best one.
Yeah, of course. It has Neil Patrick Harris in it.
Yes.
But I first heard it back in college, and then last year, around the time that you were starting to put this together, a friend of mine was in a production of Assassins. I was like, dope, no one ever puts the show on, so I absolutely have to go see it, and it was amazing.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think I discovered it around university time, like early 20s. And I was just so strangely fascinated by it in theory, just wondering how could this be a musical? And what is this musical? And then they did that performance, the Neil Patrick Harris revival. They did a performance at the Tony Awards, which is how I was exposed to most musicals growing up. And it was just so wonderfully unsettling, and the music I thought was so captivating and powerful, even though I had no idea what they were singing about. They were doing the finale, the final, everybody's got the right to be happy, and it was just so fascinating. That's the word I'll keep coming back to. So yeah, I bought the script and read it, and then about a year or two later there was a production mounted in Toronto at the Theatre Center, which had just like this all-star cast of Canadian theater performers. And I saw that they did the full John Doyle treatment where the cast were also doubling as the orchestra, and it ranks still as like one of my probably top 5 favorite theater pieces I've seen in my lifetime. It was just so good, and for the longest time, I just wanted to be in the show, as any of them. I think at one point I really wanted to be Hinckley, because "Unworthy of Your Love" was my favorite song for a while. I have thus evolved, and now Leon is the only role for me. That's the role that I find the most engaging, and yeah, even though he doesn't sing his song, his own ballad, it's my favorite ballad of whoever. So it's so good. Anyway, Jeanette, as a first timer, tell us your thoughts. Like, what did you know about this show before watching it for this?
I knew nothing of this show that you hadn't told me with your own mouth. So, like, whatever you've told me is what I knew prior to watching this show. I didn't even know it existed. I like Sondheim. Like, I'm open to Sondheim. So, that was a thing that I knew. I knew I'd go into it liking something about it. I think that this is, if you are an American, B, if you're a true crime person, who studied any capacity, whether it be killers, American history, gun history, whatever the case may be. I think that if you come at this with any element of history, you're going to view it with a lot of anticipation. So I came into this knowing, after I read the synopsis, that was enough. And that was all I needed to hear. I've said this before on this show. I'm a big alternative history person, right? So when you get a little dose of real history with a little dose of like, and then if they all met in a room, right? So I don't know if anyone else has watched American Horror Story, the 4th season, Hotel. They have all these famous killers are in a hotel room together. Like
Nice.
in the movie Monkey Bone, you have all these famous writers together in a cell.
Yes.
Like you have all these different, I love scenarios like that. So as soon as I found out that's what it was, I was hooked. So this all started off on a very positive note for me. I loved it. It was, I didn't realize we were getting doses of music from individual time periods until it had happened like 3 times. And I was like, oh, these are the music styles of these time periods, right? So it took a second. It wasn't beating you over the head with it, which I appreciated. Or else I feel like I would have noticed that a lot earlier. That was great. I loved Neil Patrick Harris in it. I'm hit or miss with him. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, he's very Neil Patrick Harris. And then other times I can take it. So here I could take it. I loved the way they approached the characters. I thought all this, I wouldn't even call it satire. Just the fact that they're taking the piss out of these people is pretty great, but that they're also sending a message that isn't necessarily the message that these people sent, but is a message, right? So everything, it hit on all cylinders for me, and I will probably rewatch it, or seek out a production of it if I can find one.
I find it so good
luck.
live. Yeah, it's
right.
so rare to
I don't
find
think
a
a lot of
production.
people, especially nowadays, I don't think anybody's putting on a show where you're aiming guns at an audience. I just don't think anybody feels comfortable with that. So,
yeah, the production I saw had a speech at the beginning, a pre-recorded speech at the beginning. Is like, look, throughout the show there's going to be gunshot noises. They are pre-recorded. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's rough. I imagine I was watching it, and that was literally a thought I had, and I'm sure we'll get into the levity of the gun situation. But yeah, as I was watching it, I was like, I just imagine, I'm like, this is 2004. There's just been a lot of time elapsed. There's been almost 20 years of gun violence between now and then. I personally don't know that I could have sat through that show without feeling like squirmy. So yeah.
And I get really squirmy anytime a gun is pointed in the audience, because
I was like, whoa.
I think when I was doing my acting degree, like the stage management team made a whole point about how maybe I don't know if this is a real rule because equity hasn't let me join yet, but apparently they claim that there was an equity rule that you're not allowed to point a gun into the house. I don't know if that's true. It sounds like a thing that makes sense to my mind, but still, yeah. So anytime now that that's in my brain, anytime I see a production where there is a gun pointed into the audience, I get really stressed out. Yeah. Like when I first discovered the show, as I tend to do, I started to envision what like the Mac directed production would be like, because with this show, I feel there's a lot of power lost with the pre-recorded gunshots, but also I don't like when guns have blanks in them on stage because that makes me nervous. So I was going to have an entire set covered with balloons, and they were just going to pop a balloon every time that there was a gunshot, so that you still get the
It's
loud.
very carnival.
Yeah. No, and it was going to be balloons that made the American flag, and then with every gunshot, they slowly went away until they revealed the book depository for the last scene for the.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Oh, I'm a very good director. People just won't give me money, but like, trust, it was a good production. It was a really good production. Yeah. So there we are. Okay, so let's dive into this show. I feel like there are so many talking points. I think the first question is why. What do you think the show is trying to say or accomplish? I think it's such a complicated piece because it's almost treating them like anti-heroes, or it's giving us the story from their perspective. And there's a lot of moments, I feel, especially as I get older, where I start to understand the circumstances that the characters are in. And it's just this fascinating study of what pushes somebody to this point, as it were. But also, I don't want to think that I'm sympathizing with or empathizing with any of them because they're literal murderers. So there we are. Opening question. What's the show trying to do?
So I think it is kind of trying to not like full on humanize them. They're not trying to like excuse their actions, but it is something that is like, hey, these people were people. Let's talk about that. It's kind of like the same thing with like Jesus Christ Superstar, for example, where it's like, hey, let's take these people that their stories and all the stories around them, but they were actual people. So let's talk about that. So it's just like, again, it's not excusing what they've done, but it's just like, let's just remember that these people have some griefs, they have their problems, and some of them you might agree with. Like Leon, for example, is like, oh he's making some points here, but it's like that still doesn't excuse the stuff that he does.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
that's what I'm thinking.
I would say, to Chris's point where they're saying these people are people, I think that if we want to do an overarching thing for this specific show in this telling, I think it's that these people are Americans. Like, these people were Americans and they felt this way. So if an American felt so horribly that they needed to take down the icon of America, what is wrong with America? And so like, that's my idea the whole time, is in this person. And I think the booth scene does the most to set it up. And I think that, of course, the Lee scene does the most to tie it together. Rightfully so. It works very well. Where in the beginning, he's explaining like the thing that I think most people who pick up a gun and go out to make some sort of statement with it feel: the country is not what it was. And it's some idea in their head of what the country was or what their life was at some point before whoever's in office is there. Mm-hmm. And that is the icon for them of whatever is wrong right now or whatever's ailing you. And whether it's going to solve your life or solve the lives of other people or whatever. And so I think that whole, the country is not what it was, that whole mentality. And then at the end of, I have nothing, so therefore I have nothing left to lose. What am I standing for? I'm going to stand for the thing that I die, that I didn't do as my last act, right? Like, so I think it's, these people are Americans and they felt bad enough to do this. So what's wrong with America? That was what I got out of it.
Oh, well said, Jeanette. We could just end the stream now. There we go.
Also, that's seeing it in 2023 with fresh eyes. Like, you know, and that's with all the heart of what the year that production was from, right? So that's a dated, you see, when you see that kind of emotion without the knowing, like, I think if you did it now, it's one of those things of you can't go back, right? You can't unknow something. So whoever does this in their hearts and in their soul is going to know what's transpired in America at this point. But the people that did it then, I'm seeing how they felt about it then. It was 20 years before everything we've had to deal with. So It's like there's a different sort of emotion there. It's weird.
Yeah, no, it's such a fascinating look, I think, at America, at the idea of what America is, or at least what's kind of portrayed to be in terms of the American dream from like an outsider perspective, and then seeing what it's like from inside of it. And then it's also interesting thinking about the Booth scene where he equates himself to Brutus, and it's almost like that was an assassination. How is this act different from that act? And it's, yeah, I don't know. There's so many things. There's so many thought-provoking things going on in this show.
And going back to Brutus, after he shoots Lincoln, Booth jumps onto the stage of the playhouse that they're at, yells "Sic Semper Tyrannis," which is something that Brutus himself actually says in the Shakespeare play, which reminds me of a meme that I saw once that was like, the assassination of Lincoln is so weird because this famous actor kills the president, and then says a quote from a character that his even more famous actor brother is famous for playing. And it's like, imagine if Liam Hemsworth like killed Biden and then shouted, "I went for the head," and then Chris Hemsworth had to like leave the Avengers media tour and be like, "Look, I had nothing to do with this."
Putting it in context.
I do think it's interesting also that they have Booth set it up, right? And Booth is famous. Everybody knows John Wilkes Booth, right? And he's the one that then goes on and is the little bird in the ear for all the following ones, right? He's like, "You should do this. It's so easy. You should do this." And arguably, with maybe the exception of Hinckley, no one else until Lee is as famous as Booth, right? Like nobody in that grouping is nearly as famous as Booth. And so I think that's interesting too, this whole Booth Lee tie-in. And then of course, all the crazy history things, the actual similarities between those two, like the days of and all the events and all that. So that's wild too, right? But I found that interesting that and Hinckley, honestly, maybe the only reason I feel that way is because that was 81 and I was born in 87. So it was the closest one to my time. So that name was still probably very fresh on the tongues of people at the time. So I feel like maybe that's the only reason I feel that way. Like, ask someone before or after me. Maybe they don't know Hinckley as much. And they know somebody else. Maybe they know the other people's names more. Who knows? Honestly, I had no idea about the Moore woman at all.
Oh, me neither.
I knew about From, but that's because I know about Charles Manson history. And again, if you come into this with any amount of serial killer history or weird history, weird coincidental facts. So I thought that was cool. This weird tie between Lee and Booth and how that's actually a real historical thing. There's all these weird similarities, and that there was just there's these people in between who were trying to make a point, and maybe it didn't go that way.
And it's also just interesting looking at how many actual assassinations there were. For whatever reason, before discovering this musical, I thought there were more than 4. I think I was just thinking of all the attempts, but the gap between the third one and the fourth one, I guess between, is it Leon? I can't say his last name. Is it Cholgog? How do you say it? I don't know how to say it.
Yeah.
Leon. We're calling him Leon. Yeah. So between Leon and Oswald is 60, almost 70 years or so, which I think just puts that last scene into such perspective when they're saying, what is it? Without you, we're lunatics. With you, we're a force of history. Which I think is fascinating, especially just in the context of, I think by that point, by the 60s, we were moving into a generation where I think very few people had lived through a presidential assassination, and it was just history, kind of where I personally feel like I am now. I haven't lived through a presidential assassination, thankfully, but to put into context, the musical was written in the 90s when the majority of theatergoers would have some memory, presumably, of what the Oswald thing was.
Yeah, I was going to get into that a little bit later on, and
let's do it now. Let's go.
What the Kennedy assassination has to do with the 90s and the renewed interest in it and the amount of visibility on it. I know personally for me, I'm a big Marilyn Manson fan. His album that came out 3 years prior to this, completely centered around the Kennedy assassinations, like huge influences of that in the music and the imagery, down to recreating it in a music video. Like that's, it was huge in culture at the time. I feel like there was all this talk about the Zabruta tapes and all that, like all the crazy stuff with that. Like, so I do feel like, especially the Kennedy scene, and like for people like me whose parents did that song, when they start doing the where I was and what I was doing thing, I can't tell you. Like, I'm going to cry. I will. It gives me chills because, like, growing up, every adult around you would talk about that commonly. Like, at least for me, like, it was common conversation. Like, oh, yeah. And, so-and-so, Uncle so-and-so was in the blah, blah, blah when he found out about Kennedy. And, like, it was common conversation. It's this thing that really gets passed around. And it's a big part when just that song, I started bawling when the videotape on the chest, and that song when they go to black and white and they're singing about where they were and the president is dead and all that. And maybe it is because it was in my music, and now I'm hearing these little snippets in here, and I don't know. It was really impactful, like the whole Kennedy thing. And I do think the closer you get to modern day, whereas like Hinckley was almost a joke. Like he was doing it for Jodie Foster. Yeah. Like that was a big joke. And but then you'd hear, and you're like, but the thing with Kennedy, like, and then Hinckley happened after him. Like it should have had more weight, but no.
I think the way Hinckley is handled is really interesting, because it's almost like, I think by the show making him out to be the joke, it's just reflective of how I feel he saw himself to some degree, at least based off of everything that this musical has taught me, and like a quick scan of the Wikipedia page, just about how he like wanted to elevate himself to a status by doing something monumental, thus to be on the same level as Jodie Foster and get her love because he's unworthy of it. But Hinckley, as I reflect on the show getting older, I think the Hinckley scene especially is just such an indication of there are just people who need help that don't have access to it. And that's just a whole other aspect of the musical that I didn't really catch on to, or it didn't resonate with me earlier on. But like,
I don't even know that was intentional. I think all of them needed help, and it's obvious, but like they all actually talk about an instance where they literally just needed another human being, and they all either get turned away or they're just alone in general, right? And I do think that it's interesting, and it is interesting that they do this whole thing, like telling Lee, like, you're the one that's going to solve it all for us, but Hinckley comes after you, and we're going to solve that with this scene where we tell you that he's imitating you. And like, we're going to solve that with this one little, because he's the one that, right? Like, so it's interesting to me. That whole scene, and
Hinckley too. They probably would have handled that with like kids' gloves a little bit, because when this was written and premiered, that happened less than 10 years before that. So they probably would have, been a bit more careful with how they handle Hinckley, because that was still like super fresh in people's minds. And even like nowadays, like,
well, he's still alive, I believe.
He's alive. He's out of prison.
He's making music.
A YouTube channel.
Is a YouTube channel?
Yep, he just posts his own music. And it's
why didn't we tag him tonight?
I was about to say, imagine he shows up in the chat.
I mean, the caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland was going to come in. Who the hell knows? Who the hell knows?
It's like I scroll through that YouTube channel. It's like, please tell me you did a cover of Unworthy of Your Love. Dang it!
No, I think I read that he wasn't happy with it because he said the actor they cast as him was too ugly.
Oh, it's theater. Jesus Christ.
Yes.
But yeah, Hinckley's still alive, Fromm is still alive, and Moore is still alive, and they're all out of prison.
I do know. Yeah, I know about Fromm. Yeah.
I also
interesting one. I thought her character, I don't know. I always find myself falling in, like, in bad, like really bad situations. Like they're, I don't know if anybody watches the show Yellow Jackets. I love the character Misty. And like she's nuts. She's completely nuts. Like she's really bonkers. And I always find myself not sympathizing with, but like feeling this like almost motherly love for like the really lost wacko girl in any story. And like
Yeah.
in this one, I'm like, oh God, I just got past that stage in my life where I felt bad for these girls. I can't fall back into it again. Like her character was written really adorably.
Her character scares me the most out of all
Really?
of them.
It's
Yeah.
kinda like Harley Quinn-ish a little bit.
Yeah,
I do. I have like
it
a
might
little
just
bit
be
of
the
a soft
actress
spot for them.
too in that production. But yeah, everything that she's just saying with conviction about how she's gonna stare at the Colonel Sanders bucket and then kill him with her eyes and everything about
I love that that's all taken from fact too. Like that's all things he would coach them on. Yeah.
It just feels so farcical and so satirical, but watching it, I'm like, I just know, not for a fact, but I could just feel that it's not, which is what is, yeah, it is.
I love this dirty little elf man.
Yes.
Oh my God, that was. I love that.
And I think Moore's portrayal is really interesting because I did a quick read up on her Wikipedia page, and I almost feel like they made her more of a joke in the musical than she is in real life. Like definitely just reading, she was saying her whole motivation was that she wanted to spark an insurrection or something like that. Like she wanted to just cause trouble. Basically, almost like a parallel of what's her face, Emma Goldblum, who interacts with Leon.
Emma.
Oh,
she's like Emma a prominent person.
Goldman.
Goldman.
Yeah, she wanted to stir things up for the working class, though. I feel like she had a goal, and that's commonly how a lot of these people get led astray, right? Like they find somebody who has a good message, and then they twist it.
Yeah, well, I think just the inclusion of her is really interesting, and I adore it. Just seeing somebody who has the same passion, but manages it in a more productive, less murdery way. I think
that's showing him being abandoned by the one. Remember, I said like I feel like all of these things come down to them meeting another human being, and he's literally told like, "Nah, like I hear you, I see you, but no, I'm gonna leave."
It's almost like a setup for the same thing with Hinckley and Jodie Foster. Like puts him into a spot where he feels like he needs to do something in order to get the attention, in order to get the validation, as it were. Even though I think for Leon, there's more behind that as well. The whole his
is a much easier story to understand.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I want to go back to
working class.
Was that working class?
Yeah, especially if you're in the working class.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that scene when he's describing like the bottle factory.
Yeah.
Just so.
And there's actually a really cool callback to the Coke bottle in the Ballad of Kozlov, because like obviously he has that big rant with the Coke bottle, and then during the ballad, as he's like getting closer and closer to the front of the line, everyone's talking up about like how great William McKinley is, and Kozlov might start doubting himself, and then like a kid offers him a sip of a Coke.
Right.
And it's like, oh, that's a reminder of why I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
You know what's just those little moments.
Yeah. You know what's funny? Is it the Garfield murder? Yeah, it's Gateau. Garfield didn't even die of his gunshot. It was like a bunch of days later, and he just died of infection because people were stupid.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. That was a whole thing BT done.
Like they literally just like didn't sterilize. I mean, go watch Gone with the Wind, people. It was only 20 years later. They weren't sterilizing anything.
So essentially, Matt, a little American history for you.
Yes, please.
Is like Jeanette said, Garfield didn't initially die from his wounds. He lived for like another month afterwards. But like he had the bullet in him for like that whole time. So they
didn't think to take it out?
Well,
they tried. That's why they kept infecting him.
they commissioned Alexander Graham Bell,
yeah.
inventor of the telephone, to make like a metal detector to like find the bullet that did not work. So they were just fishing around in him with unwashed fingers, and then everything went downhill from that.
Yeah. And he lived for like
People
2
in
months. It was like
1880 is
75
stupid,
days.
kids.
Yeah. So that guy was such an idiot. He not only didn't kill him, but he really didn't kill him. Like technically it was the doctors that killed him. It was malpractice.
Like if he had smart doctors, he would have been fine.
Yeah.
Also, I love that it's Alexander Graham Bell, because of course it was a Canadian that killed that. Yeah, dropped the ball or dropped the bell. There it is.
Hey.
Yeah. So I want to go back to that song "Something Just Broke" that Jeanette mentioned, where they're all talking about reaction to the Kennedy assassination, because that for me has always been my least favorite song. Really? I know.
Oh my God.
I've always had the perspective of why is this here? And it feels like a massive tonal shift to have the entire narrative pretty well driven from the perspective of the assassins, and then all of a sudden shift it to here's everybody else. And in my balloon production that I directed in my mind, I always cut it and went straight from Kennedy being shot into everybody's got the right. But let's talk to me more about this, or Chris, give me your perspective on that song and its place there. I mean, I think you already have won me over, Jeanette, by giving me everything you said, but still, let's dive into it a little deeper.
So I'm going to talk about this as just because the perspective on this particular song has really kind of shifted. Like in the original production in the 90s, it was fine, but then the 2004 revival and whenever it happened just a few years after 9/11. And it's a similar kind of feeling of like, oh, I remember when this happened, and all this like collective mourning happens. And the whole thing with the assassins is like they have like these frustrations, and they're like, I'm at my low, so to kind of like prove my point, I'm going to share my misery, because the American dream is a lie, and I'm going to prove it. So by doing these horrible things, especially with Kennedy, which is why it happens after the Kennedy assassination, because it was like the first major event like this, like once, TV and news really started getting around a lot easier, that like everyone just kind of like shared this misery. Is like
when it happened on live television.
Yeah.
It was the first time something like that had really happened on live television.
Yeah, so it's just like it kind of like puts things into perspective, because like beforehand, like 50s in particular, is like, everything is all nice and peachy keen, and now people are kind of
as long as you're not a commie.
Yeah, as long as you're not a commie. So I think it's just there to kind of show that, this misery can be shared. Like, even though America's not perfect, like when something like this happens, we all feel it.
Yeah. I was going to say, so what Chris said about the post 9/11, I would love to, again, because of that, I talk about that dated emotion, right? Where there's not this idea of now we've had all this gun violence, right? Although this was 2004, we're watching this production from, Columbine had happened as well. So you did have a touch more gun violence in the immediate eye of the public, but I do think 9/11 would have been the reigning thing that made you feel this particular scene, like Chris said, like that really is our generation's something stopped, something broke. Like, I know where I was, I know what I was doing. And I think, like you said, this song does tonally shift. And I think it does it really well, because you're supposed to feel that. I think that you're supposed to feel not just the Kennedy one, but like how it would have felt after all these other ones, but specifically Kennedy. Like this happened on television. They show that with the video, right? They're like, look, there's video of this. They show that. They show everybody stopping and not just like where it was really comical before, like with the attempted assassinations where they have the people step up and be like, I saw this and I saw this and I saw this. And it was very funny and all that, because you have the video and because there's still people alive that were there when it happened. I think they had to make that one way heavier because these other ones that you don't have anybody around for. And I also think that's why, again, like we touched on Hinckley, I think that's why that one's more somber. It's not silly, right? Like it's a silly idea. What the guy did, if you say it out loud, is kind of ridiculous, but like they made it very somber. And they took him a little more seriously than I think anybody really at that point in time did. So this one, I think you had to slow it down if you want to get the effect that it had on people, because there were people and are people still alive that experienced it.
It's interesting also hearing that and just thinking, what was I going to say? Yeah, I feel like now just reflecting on it that I guess drawing the attention to it with that song and even just the way that the Oswald scene is written, it adds almost, I guess, an awareness, I suppose, because it's almost like everything that you've seen happen so far away from where we are in history now that's almost like couldn't happen now, but then it does, even though that's like from a pseudo 90s perspective. But yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say, Chris? I cut you off with my thought train.
Yeah, you're fine. Just to kind of build on that, you were talking about how you didn't like the tonal shift. Well, it is really representative of, like, for most of these assassinations, how everything was, going all right. And then, because, like, JFK was assassinated during a parade. McKinley was assassinated at, like, some big expo. Lincoln was shot while watching a comedy. It's like, right as the Civil War was ended. So, like, all these things were going well, and then one person just comes in, shifts the tone dramatically. So I think that's what the real musical motif of why we go from the big bombastic Sondheim carnival stuff to this somber tune.
Yeah.
Nicely said. Let's go into the comments. Bob Hunt, as a Canadian, I do find it difficult to comment on this play as we don't have the Second Amendment as far as firearms. Our charter came into effect in 1982. It's about a loophole in the American dream, the understanding that the American dream, where you can succeed based on hard work alone, is a fallacy. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Well, and more so modernly, I feel. Even more than that.
It's literally the whole point of another national anthem.
Yeah. No, it's
Where's my prize?
Where's my prize? I want my prize. I was gonna comment on that. Oh well, I'll come back to it. I can't remember what I was gonna say. But we've kind of grazed around this. But specifically, how do you feel that this show would hold up for a 2023 audience? Because as we said, like the 2004 revival, that was in the wake of 9/11, which was a national tragedy. And now here we are 20 plus ish years later. And there was an off-Broadway revival, I think just last year or so. But absolutely, I think it's a show that in some ways is extremely timeless, sadly, because even the show itself is showing that a lot of issues had not shifted or changed over the 150 plus years. But then at the same time, we're in a totally different political place. And like I said earlier, we're an audience where maybe 50% of theater goers weren't around for Kennedy specifically. So we don't have that direct personal attachment. So how do you feel it would hold up for an audience today? And then I have a follow-up question, but we'll get there.
I feel like we said before that I think you might have to change some things literally, physically, logistically about the show to make it not so triggering for people. I mean, like I said, I'm not easily offended, and I just don't know that I could sit, like, especially if I was close to the stage with people aiming guns out at me. Like, I don't know that I could do it. So I think that's kind of it. But other than that, no, I think it's a vital message that needs to be said. This might be more relevant now even than when it was originally put out in the early 90s. Like, I think it was 90, 91. I feel like this might be more relevant now, to be completely honest.
I agree. Like I said, I saw the production last year. So that's about as close as modern as we're going to get right now in this stream. But when I saw that production, they didn't change anything. Like, they had the pre-recorded gunshots and, made sure that it's like, hey, these gunshots were pre-recorded. Don't forget about that. But it's like, it still has all that dark comedy. It still has the shooting gallery and all that imagery in there. So, and like Jeanette said, yeah, it gets more and more relative with each passing year. And like, some of my favorite media is like, I'm a firm believer that art should challenge you in some way. It should make you uncomfortable. And like, a lot of people, like, this show gets so rarely produced because it's an uncomfortable subject matter. It's a musical about American presidential assassination.
Well, and they show
That's
like
a hard sell.
Yeah, they show like 2 or 3 suicides in it too. Like,
yeah,
it's literally triggering in a very valid way. I don't even mean that in like a super PC, like whatever way nowadays. I mean, like, validly, like, guns, suicide, things that make people super uncomfortable. Like, it's not, Chris is right, it's challenging people who aren't even easily offended.
Yeah, no, it's it's interesting because it was supposed to be done here, like in the Niagara region where I am, at the Shaw Festival, which is, I think, the second biggest theater festival in North America. Like, it's a big deal, the Shaw Festival. So it's a theater festival that initially started producing the works of George Bernard Shaw, and then the mandate kind of changes with every artistic director, but the ongoing thing is doing provocative theater that is based in ideas and discussion, conversation, kind of like Shaw was. And so originally they were supposed to do Assassins in 2020, which I thought would have, like, that was a choice. That was obviously a very deliberate choice because that was election year, right? Yeah, that was election year.
2020,
yeah. So they would have been doing this show during an election year, and even though it's a Canadian theater company, we're right on the border, so they do get a lot of U.S. tourists. So I think that was an interesting choice. It never actually happened, the production, because it was canceled. Well, I know, right? But all the other shows kind of came back. This one they tried to do in a reduced capacity, like outdoors as a concert production last year, and then it was actually canceled by MTI, the rights holders. Because, and this was a whole thing, like there were news articles about this. In the rehearsal process, they started rehearsing in 2020, then the world took a detour, and then when they came back, they had new directors, so they kind of picked up the rehearsal process, and then in the Booth song, they had like not been saying the racial slur, they were just glossing over it, and they claimed that it, like, they just kept on not doing it with the intention of working the word back in when they actually got into performance mode, because they said that there was sensitivity training, I think, or workshops or something that they wanted to do to make the actors feel comfortable before the production happened. That never happened. And so they did their first production or their first performance without using the word. And then MTI found out and shut them down, basically. Yeah. And so,
wow.
Right?
I mean, I could see not wanting to do that in today's climate. I could understand that.
And Shaw, they put out a statement. I can't remember exactly what it said, but I think generally the gist was that they opted to cancel the production instead of using the slur, as it were, like putting the actor in a position of, well, just say it, because like that's not great either. But there we go. But what are your thoughts on that, on changing words, as it were, because it kind of opened up the discussion of when are things appropriate, when are they not appropriate? Like, is it okay to make changes without consulting the rights holders? Like, legally it's not, but
so I think I don't know, I know Matt and I, you and I are the same age. I assume you're the same age too. Yes, around the same age, maybe.
I just turned 31.
Okay.
Ballpark.
Slightly younger. So I do feel like, depending on where you're from, right? I'm from New Orleans. So like I feel like I was still growing up on the tail end of, like, you could observe some wild stuff coming out of people's mouths and the way people acted and things like that, as far as racially charged situations when I was growing up. I'm sure you still can today, but like stuff that kids today would probably like have a seizure over. So like I do feel like maybe my sensitivities are numbed a little bit. I'm also a big fan of stand-up comedy. So, with these elements in my head, I genuinely feel that language, when you're talking about art, in this case, John Wilkes Booth said that about Abraham Lincoln. Like, that's a real fact. That's real words. They're not, it's like using scientific terms for bodily parts when we're trying to talk to children. We're not trying to be lewd. We're not trying to be dirty. We're trying to literally talk about it, right? So we're literally trying to talk about it here, right? So there's a thing that somebody said, and it's what they said. I think when there's art involved, that's okay. That's my thoughts, and that's because I think everybody and where they're what they're comfortable with is a big mixture of what they've already experienced in their lives mixed with what they're willing to experience from here on out, right? So like you make those decisions for yourself. I like art. I like pushing boundaries, and I don't even think this is pushing a boundary. The man said it. So like if we're talking about this literal instance,
yeah,
cool. I think it's okay to say it.
Yeah, kind of the same thing. Is like, yeah, if you're kind of just like Quentin Tarantino just saying these words just to say these words, that's a bit sus. But it is like, if it is, John Wilkes Booth or something like that, it is historically accurate. And like, if I somehow got cast as John Wilkes Booth, I'd be uncomfortable saying it. I would like, a little bit of the workshop that you were talking about, just to get that out of me. But you kind of do expect it. I actually mentioned earlier that I did a production of Hunchback of Notre Dame, and obviously they say gypsy a lot, which is kind of a slur in of itself. But the director, I'm not saying the name of the director or the production company because I don't feel like getting sued. But whenever like Frollo or any of the people of Paris would say it as written, but if it was any of the Roma, they would say Roma instead of gypsy. And that would make more sense. They wouldn't use a slur to describe themselves.
Right.
I don't know if that was something that they got the permission for, or they...
Oh, is it not written that way?
No. It's all the way through.
Really?
Yeah. It's like in God Help the Outcast. I don't know if you can hear me or if you're even there.
Oh, right.
I don't know if you would listen to this poor gypsy's prayer.
Right.
They change it to this poor Roma's prayer.
I like your choice better. Or your production choice better. Well, I know they do say Roma, or they sing Roma or Romani in one of the songs towards the end. It's like a really nice lyric of Roma must roam again.
Romanese once again must roam.
Yes. Yeah. So I thought maybe
that was very much an outlier.
Okay.
But
what a good show.
Why, like, Frollo would use the slur, but the Romani wouldn't. And it's kind of the same thing in here. Like, John Wilkes Booth would use a slur, other people would not.
Yeah.
I mean, I think my perspective is generally aligned with everything that we've discussed already. I feel like if you're committing to doing Assassins, that's in some ways not the tip of the iceberg, but you're dealing with a lot of other stuff that's equally, in some ways, uncomfortable or taboo
I feel
or controversial.
I'll say again, I feel like the suicide scenes are way more like, whoa, dude, like in this than that is. And that's because that's me. That's my brain. That's what upsets me. Like, I'm sure for other people it's something else, right? There's a lot of stuff in this, and that's why I don't think it's not touring my local theater on the regular.
You're not going to see
There's
Assassins Junior anytime soon.
yeah, I'm just gonna go see a play about women being beheaded and enslaved, and it's just 6. It's fine. But I'm just saying, like, certain things make people uncomfortable, more people than others. There's a way we can make light of it, or we can use it to learn from, or whatever. And I think this play does a wonderful mix of doing all of that. I think they make light of some things. What I really liked was that in the scenes where you did have a suicide or a death of the person who attempted or committed the assassination, what I liked was, yes, we gave this person a minute to give their story and to have their piece. And then as soon as they die, we're going to play some carnival music and remind you that they're a sack of crap and they killed somebody. So, or tried to kill somebody. So I liked that they took the piss out of these people. Like, as soon as we had our moment, they were like, dun, 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 dun. I was like, great, awesome. Like they were still wheeling the body up from the hanging from Guitard, and they were like, doo, 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 doo. I'm like, yeah, great, awesome. Like, that's how you do it. You give me this ridiculous, absurdist imagery of somebody dead with carnival music behind it. Then I'm going to take it. I will always go back to the Trey Parker statement of, if you don't go all the way, that's when it's unbelievable. If you don't take it all the way, that is when nobody wants to see it and everybody starts squirming in their seat. You have to go fully. If you pull back, if you hold back, that's when it's uncomfortable, and that's when nobody really is into your jive.
Commit to the bit.
That's such a good quote, just in general, but especially for this show. You have to go,
like,
yeah.
You have to take it all the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like this show would be so difficult to work on or to put or to produce or put up, even though, again, I had my perfect production mapped out when I was in my 20s, but I don't think if I had done that production, it wouldn't have been good. Like, I don't think I would have really understood the gravity or the weight and the need to balance that with the levity, or the fact that the levity is there to comment on all the other stuff that's happening. But yeah, so with that said, how do we like, or what are our thoughts on the entire carnival motif? Like, do we think
I think it's
works?
very interesting. It's certainly a unique setting, because going back to the metaphor of the prize, that's the American dream, and having that motif really helps bring that home, because I don't know how common they are in Canada, but like, shooting galleries are very common here in the United States. Even Magic Kingdom has one, but
oh yeah,
at Frontierland. But it's like, yeah, it's like having this like bright flashing carnival noises. Anyway, here's a gun, win a prize kind of thing. It like really drives home just the discordance between the overall feeling and the actual subject matter.
No, I think it's a perfect a perfect representation of everything that the show sort of is. Because when I think of carnivals, I think of very flashy, like fun, classic American, innocent good times, like the American dream, whilst at the same time they're usually being worked and given to you by people who are underpaid and overworked and are like the working class, as it were. So it just, to me, it feels so perfect.
Sorry, got something in my throat.
Okay. Oh no. Of course. What was it? Do it again. I missed it.
Sorry, I got it.
Okay. There we go. There it is. Right.
You need another drink.
Like, I'd also imagine a production of this in the Hall of Presidents. Like, that's hand in hand with my vision for this show now.
Very nice.
Yes, it just feel like very theme parky.
I feel like, so when I first started watching this, the carnival thing was putting me off for a minute. I didn't quite get past like the shoot 'em gallery, how it was going to really play into it, and then it really did. It ran away with the theme. of everybody's, step right up, everybody gets a chance, right? Everybody's, it's an even game, but that it's really rigged, right? Isn't that another thing with carnivals, is that it's rigged?
Yeah.
And so I like that. I also like that carnival, like, personally, and again, this is a modern take on it. Maybe this wasn't even an intention of the message. But carnivals and shooting galleries we're introducing children to guns, right? Like, we're introducing guns to culture, just just around toy guns, real gun, whatever. Like, here's a gun. Put a gun in your hands. So I feel like that was a part of it, as far as the actual shooting gallery style game. The carnival imagery overall, I thought, just in general, helped to lighten the mood. And whenever we had all of these people who were killers on a stage with a gun in their hands, it helped to kind of take that edge off. Because imagine that scene with just a black backdrop and like a spotlight on each and every one of them. Like, that's a lot scarier and more intense. Than having them with like blinky lights and like shoot to win, or like if you shoot you win, like this mentality. So I like that.
In the production I saw, it wasn't in like a traditional theater. It was in a saloon, essentially. It was in this bar in downtown Orlando that looked like this old-timey Western saloon. And they had like the stage that had all the carnival stuff, but pretty much everything that was like super serious, like the actual attempts on the president's lives and all like the serious moments, like took place amongst the audience, and then the lighter stuff happened on the stage amongst all the carnival stuff.
Nice.
I think having that shift in perspective also helped with the, anyway, here's the serious stuff, and now here's some levity.
Nice.
Yeah. So in that production, did they do the Neil Patrick Harris double casting of Balladeer going into Oswald?
They,
or did they separate
actually did not, and I was really surprised they didn't, because I thought it was like pretty standard.
Yeah, no, I think that was introduced with the Neil production, and then it worked.
Really?
And people just kind of kept it. Normally, like it's written as two different characters.
Really?
Yeah.
So, okay, well, let's go there then, because like that was the whole time I'm sitting there and I'm like, are you really gonna make a play about American assassins and you're not gonna have Lee Harvey Oswald? Like, what? And the whole time I'm sitting there like, the hell's going on? What are you talking about? Like, this is crazy. I was like, obviously they couldn't get like the sign off on his name or so. I don't know. I was like, what? This is stupid. I'm like, as we're getting towards the end, I'm like, this is ridiculous. How are you gonna have a thing?
Flip the table.
I was starting to get like pissed off. Like, we're getting towards the end, and I'm like, we're getting to the scene with like Fromm and Hinckley, and I'm like, okay,
we missed someone.
Yeah, I'm like, I think we left somebody behind. I think we've missed the whole point here, people. And so finally, and then when they did that, it was like the most M. Night Shyamalan crap I was like, it was so great. It was the best twist. And to know that that wasn't originally intended in the 90s production, that's wild. I can't believe that.
Mm-hmm.
That was the best part of it all. And not the best part, but like, it was pretty great because I'm sitting there the whole time like, okay, and who is this person? Where's Lee Harvey Oswald?
Lee Harvey Oswald factory.
I'm like, what in the world? So, yeah,
well, it's so satisfying to have the most obnoxious character have some kind of payoff as well for why he's there.
I guess I didn't find him obnoxious at all. I thought he was good. I thought the Balladeer.
I think it's very telling about like what the director thinks about the show in general, especially nowadays, whether or not they make the Balladeer into Lee Harvey Oswald or not. Because like the Balladeer is obviously supposed to be representative of the idea of the American dream, the pull yourself up by the bootstraps and make your way in the world kind of thing. The idea. And so having him be like corrupted by the assassins into becoming Lee Harvey Oswald says a lot about, is like, yeah, the American dream is messed up. And so we'll examine that. Whereas if they don't turn him into Lee Harvey Oswald, it is like, hey, the American dream might not be as strong to like fight back against these guys, but it's still there.
Okay. Yeah. 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 It's hard. Yeah. It's hard for me to process that character as well as the proprietor. That's the name. Yeah. Yeah. What do we think about the proprietor? Because whereas this production, I think, kind of, as you said, thematically makes a nice link between the balladeer and then one of the assassins. I feel like the proprietor just sort of fades away into nothing.
Yeah,
and
he was confusing to me.
Yeah.
He almost did, and he did that weird like ghost thing with Hinckley. Like,
yeah, when he was like
Ghost, he's like, oh, it was weird. That scene was the most uncomfortable scene for me.
So I think the proprietor and the balladeer are supposed to be two sides of the same coin. Both of them is like the idea of the American dream. Like the balladeer is the bright and cheerfully side of the idea of America, whereas the proprietor is that like seedy underbelly for those who are, you know, left behind and forgotten. And whereas the balladeer is like, you know, talking things up, the proprietor is there the whole time, or the whole time before he mysteriously disappears before the end, being like, hey, here's your gun, prize super simple to win, take it into your own hands, kind of thing.
Yeah, I just wish that there was a payoff in some way for that character.
Yeah, that's fair.
I almost thought that the proprietor was supposed to symbolize death, because like he's the executioner in Gatan, whatever.
Yeah. Giteau. Yeah.
Giteau, and then what was the other? Oh, with the Hinckley thing, when Hinckley's like writing the song to her and basically coming to terms with what he's gonna do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It felt like he was like the kiss of like darkness or death or whatever the case may be. But again, I did feel disconnected from him after the first scene. Like after the first scene, I was like, he had a lot to say in the first scene, and then not very.
And then he just goes away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
he shows up, but he's just some weird henchman guy in the background.
Yeah, there's no payoff. And yeah, for the longest time, my issue with this show was that you had such a strong ensemble of assassins, and then the balladeer turning into Oswald is brilliant. And then you have all of these side characters, which also played into me not loving Something Just Broke, because it felt like you had all these additional entities that weren't really present, and then all of a sudden they were there.
I
guess I just felt like they were supposed to be, like in the other scenes, like the American people. They're the American people.
Yeah. In the production I saw, it's like you had your group of assassins, you had the balladeer, you had the proprietor, and then you had like the ensemble of like 5 extra people who played like Emma Goldman, and they played Garfield and McKinley, which annoyingly they had an ensemble member with like a big beard, and then like another ensemble member who was, you know, round and bald. Mm-hmm. So perfect matches for Garfield and McKinley, respectively, but they played the opposite president. I was very annoyed by that. But I digress. But it's like you still had the rest of these ensemble members present pretty much throughout, adding in, and like they were there. They were the ones singing in "How I Saved Roosevelt." Mm-hmm. So just like bringing them back all in at the end, it was less jarring than it was like, here's 5 people you've never met before.
I guess, again, going back to my imaginary production in my 20s, it was only the assassins, and then How I Saved Roosevelt, they were all puppets. It was a puppet show. Yeah, it was like we were watching the Muppets. It was incredible. So there we are. What was everyone's favorite song and or most powerful and affecting moment in the show?
Well, I already said mine, right?
Those might be So,
I mean,
yeah.
I pretty much said mine.
Yeah.
It was the Kennedy scene was the most affecting moment. Favorite song. I mean, that one's up there. I think maybe aside from that, it would probably be the Gateau one. 'Cause that one was pretty good.
Look at the
He's
bright
just-
side. Look on the bright
Yeah,
side.
just going between the two things. You know what he reminded me of now that I'm thinking about it? Do you remember the little singing Warner Brothers frog? When he
Oh
would
my
do
God.
that and
Yes.
he would
Hi,
cut
hello.
between the two songs. It reminded me of the frog.
Well, I'm going to see the Lordy was actually a song that Gateau wrote and sang before his actual execution.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
History
guy
is weird, my dude.
That's
was
so
Wanna hear
sad.
Something weird about Gateau and the assassination of Garfield.
Yeah.
Garfield was assassinated at a train station. You know who else was in the train station at the time?
Tell me.
Robert Todd Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's son. That's
Oh
real.
yeah.
Huh.
Yep. I read that too.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
It is all coming together. Yeah, I think my most affecting moment from this production, at least, is the tape on the white shirt, like playing the Kennedy assassination on Lee Harvey Oswald. Like that's so good, and even just the music coming in for what is that song? Is it "Hail to the Chief" or is it something else? Do.
Oh yeah. No, when I
I
realized he was playing some sort of slow version of "Hail to the Chief."
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah.
dun. Yeah.
Except every production or slime tutorial / bootleg I've seen doesn't hit that moment as well as this production does, and then I get kind of disappointed. And,
Yeah, I was gonna say that was really impactful.
Yeah, I think it's tough to make this show work, or tough to do it. Yeah, tough to make it work. Because if you look up, well, I think even Vince comments on it here. They tried to watch the slime tutorial and couldn't. They tried to watch the Boston University production because it had better video quality, but that was somehow worse. Yeah, I watched a bunch of slime tutorials from independent and school productions, and this is a harder show to pull off than one would think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like there are all the dark, heavy subject matter things that we've touched on, but I think even just getting the music and the pacing and the direction and the tech into a place where it makes you feel what you're supposed to feel is a tricky endeavor. And like that goes back to how I was saying I don't like the idea of using sound effect gunshots, because to me that rings as very obviously fake, even though I also don't like having blanks or real guns. So that's why my solution was balloons. So there we go. Have something pop, have something explode. Chris, did you tell us your favorite song or favorite moment?
I did not. So my favorite song, Unworthy of Your Love, that's in my audition book, but the Ballad of Kozlov it's a banger. In Buffalo. And that one is really effective, just for that like repeated motif of to the front of the line, because Kozlov's gradually moving up the line and when he gets to the front, we all know what happens there. So that one is not only is it just catchy as all hell, but it is like great of like racking up that tension before the moment of truth. As for a moment that like really like resonated with me, the Lee Harvey Oswald thing too. Definitely the climactic moment, emotional moment of the play, because in the production I saw, even though that they had like the pre-recorded sound effect for the gun when it went off, and there was like a blackout when the gun went off, you still heard the magazine drop, like when the shot happened. So just like hearing that whole effect, just like and then silence before something just broke starts.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, one thing that resonated with me, especially in this recent rewatch, was just being able to follow Leon's story more coherently, because there are just so many things happening. There are so many assassins. There are so many weird scenes in that no man's land world where they're all talking for some reason, even though they're different time periods. But then just kind of piecing together everything that Leon does and seeing how that tells his own little arc. His narrative arc is so effective. Like to read between the lines.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting too. They always took the time to lump. They would do these weird little songs where they would lump together killers who had the same or similar intention or same or similar causation to them being like not okay. Like that scene with Leon is him, Booth, Gateau, and Moore, which were all the ones that were just like the I'm gonna make a statement with my gunshot thing, right? And then they had Hinckley and Fromm because they were the lovers, right? The ones that were driven by love. And then there was another scene. What was the one they had 3 of them together? But they did it like 3 or 4 times where they had songs where it was we have a similar motive or we have a similar place in the world. And those were very interesting to me because I found them trying to, again, that was there is this type of American, there is this type of human that this is their causation, this is their plight, and they would lump them out of this group of whatever it was, 6 or 7 people, right?
Yeah, I thought the lumping for the gun song, which is the one with Booth, Leon, Gateau, and Moore, was in some ways weird because it's like it was 3 of the people who actually successfully assassinated plus Moore. And that was my logic, was thinking, I understand why the 3 of you are here. And Oswald is on the back burner. Like he's coming, but why is she here?
Because well, like you said, they made her more of a joke. So I feel like this didn't read properly, but her motive was more similar to those people than the other people.
Was more similar.
Although I did find it weird that Zag whatever wasn't in that group.
Zagari? I think it's Zagari.
Yeah.
I always forget about him too.
Zagara, but
I will say Giuseppe had like my favorite funny moment in the whole thing. Like is like very early on when he's like talking about like his stomach pains and he's like, I tried everything, I tried drinking, I tried going sober, I tried smoking, I done this, I did this, and then John Wilkes Spoof just like deadpans, have you considered killing Franklin Delano Roosevelt? And Giuseppe's like, I hadn't. But that sounds dope. Let's do it.
Yeah, no, I love that scene. Actually,
this is gonna be that kind of show.
I really liked his like spotlight song, where he's like, it's no help. It's no help. I'm like, oh no. I felt so bad. And like I had read about this guy before, and it is really sad. Like this guy, I think genuinely just had some sort of physical ailment that was causing him to go bonkers. And it's very sad. Like it really stinks. And he did nothing.
And the media was just focused on the white noise of all these people who would be like, yeah, it was me that I saved the day, instead of like the poor person who clearly needs some help.
Yeah, no, and because he was an immigrant, right? He's treated like he was just some whack job, right? Like, yeah.
So they all just get help for people.
Just need a hug.
Yeah, give them a hug. Or take the guns away.
Yeah, do that first.
Or both. Why not both?
Yeah, give people help and take the guns away. Like something that I think is an interesting conversation piece, which I don't have an answer to, and I would probably be the best person to answer this on the stream, but do you think that this show can work for an audience outside of America? Just thinking back to the fact that Shaw was going to do it here. I have seen a production here, and I opened up a conversation about this show on my Facebook feed, and one of my friends that went through the same acting program as me, she said, I don't think this show she said it shouldn't be done by Canadians, but it was something like, what's the point, as it were, because we have a different political experience up here. And then my initial thought was, I think there are themes that are universal enough that no matter where you are in the world, you can relate to it. But I do think there is also something to be said about how distinctly American it is. Even just hearing the discussion from both of you has given me a lot more insight into it that I didn't have beforehand. But what do you think? Do you think the show would work for an audience of non-American theater goers?
I think it could, because like you said, there are like plenty of themes that like resonate no matter where you're at. Like obviously it's going to resonate a lot more with an American audience, but also at the same time, we're Americans. We don't know our own history. So it's like, it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of an example here. It's kind of like when they like transfer Hamilton over to like the West End.
Right.
It's like that is something that is steeped in American history. It has all this stuff, but there's a lot of different themes and character motivations that will still work over there, even though it is 100% about America.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say that I don't think it would work great for a crowd that's not American. I think that Matt, you almost proved that a little bit tonight, where you're like, and that whole Kennedy thing, I just don't get why they had
Yeah,
to totally
I
shift
get why that
that.
song's
And I'm
there.
like, it's the Kennedy assassination. What are you talking about? Like, I know how my family reacts to it if you bring it up in a room. Like, it totally shifts things. It's like, like to me, I'm like, oh my God, yeah. Like, if your family, and I also feel like if you don't have some sort of personal connection to the Civil War and the Kennedy assassination, two very key points of this and how you're supposed to feel and what side of the fence you're supposed to fall on to understand this are blasted. Like, if you don't know where you're supposed to be on the side of that, or like if you don't really like, if you're like, I don't know, maybe this Booth guy has a point. Like, if you even pause to think that, like, then the whole thing's kind of, for you kind of blasted. Like, no, you can't, like, because I don't think in the end, I really don't think they're trying to humanize these people. They're trying to tell you, like, look, this is a problem. We have a problem here. Let's address it. But I don't think they're trying to be like, oh, poor John Wilkes Booth. Like, I don't think that you should leave here feeling that way. And I feel like if you don't have the context to not feel that way, maybe you feel that way. Like, so yeah, I think if you don't have a lot of context, like, sure, you can watch it if you're Canadian or British and probably get it, because our culture has saturated your culture so much to the point where you might get it. But like, aside, aside from that, man, then no, like, unless you do some homework, no, I don't think this is an enjoyable show for anybody that doesn't get it.
Well said. Oh, my lights went out. Oh well. No, they're back now. They're back.
Oh.
It does that every once in a while. I think it's a ghost.
I was like, is there a storm? I don't know. Oh, a ghost is much better.
It happens during my workday too, and I actually think scientifically it's probably just the light bulb going out, but I like to think it's a ghost.
Scientifically, it's a ghost.
Yeah, scientifically it's a ghost.
Obviously.
It's interesting. Like, I want to dive a little bit more into your statement, Jeanette, about how you don't think the show is trying to humanize them, because I agree, but I also don't agree. But I don't know why. I think that's the thing I'm constantly grappling with this show, is that it's so weird to have these people at the forefront.
I think they're getting you to listen to them. But I think that's where we are in the world right now. That's kind of sad, is that to even just stop and listen to somebody who has an opposing view of yours is considered humanizing them. Like, yeah. I'm like, no, I can stop and listen to what you have to say and not over humanize a killer, right? Like, I can, and again, I think it does, maybe was not an intention, but I think that one of the other messages of this show is the mental stability and mental health aspect of it. Like, every single one of these people, again, we said it before, just needed another person. Whether they thought that person was Jodie Foster or they were just lonely in general, like, they just needed a person.
The other person is a psychiatrist.
Yeah. So I think that message is in there too. But saying, hey, this person is mentally unstable is not humanizing them. And when I say humanize, I mean, like, oh, totally. I guess I should say sympathize more than humanize. Like, I don't think they're trying to make us sympathize with them at all. Like, I don't think that is the goal, nor should that be the goal. But I do think, like I said before, I think they're trying to Americanize them. Like, you can't say that this person that did this horrible thing that you don't agree with wasn't also an American. And I think that's something that we have trouble getting around with gun violence all the time. Like 9/11 was easy. They weren't Americans. Could
Right.
point fingers all day. But like when it's gun violence, when it is another American, it's really hard. It's like it's rough. So yeah, it's really hard to hear it and to see it. And so to Americanize them is almost harder, I think, for my psyche, because I'm like, well, crap. Like this is someone who wanted to make a statement about where we are, our life. So yeah, I think it's harder.
And
Yeah.
to like build on the these people were Americans, it's like very much it does kind of humanize them because like I said earlier, it is the point of the show is to just be like, hey, these people were people, and like I've said, it's like I like sympathize with like Leon and what he's saying about like how the working class is like constantly getting trounced on. So that made it uncomfortable for me when that like similar passion eventually led him to that point of shooting a president. And you can kind of see like other things like Gateau was like this self-aggrandizing egomaniac. You know, John Wilkes Booth was like this super patriot for his country.
Mhm.
Quotation marks. Confederacy, you get the quotation marks. And it's just like these other things that like in like small doses, you can be patriotic for your country. You can like think of yourself a bit. You can understand the workers' plight. You can have all these things, but when you continue to take it to that extreme, and you go down that dark road, that's when it becomes a problem.
Well said. So glad I have Americans here. And yeah, I think the other perspective that I'm seeing more so now as your neighbor to the north is the whole element of gun violence, as it were, especially since I've become more sensitive to it and aware of it in everyday news because of like all the awfulness of the last, well, forever, as it were. But I think the ready availability of firearms is something that just I can't wrap my mind around, as it were, because that's just never been part of my lived experience as a Canadian. Like we've had to do lockdown drills in school, like as a just in case, because obviously guns exist here. But like when I think of something like the context of assassins, I almost feel like since they are historical figures that are in some ways defined by their relationship with a gun, I almost think of them as an exception to the rule as opposed to no, they're just it could be anybody because there it is. And that's
to quote the only trustworthy news site in existence, The Onion, there's no way to prevent this, says the only nation where this regularly happens.
Oh my gosh. Every time they reshare that, my heart breaks more. Well, another thing that I wanted to examine or touch on, which we haven't really talked about, is the whole idea that the show presents about almost idolizing certain figures, whether they're presidents or celebrities, and the class differentiation that inherently creates. And like, it's interesting that Brutus is mentioned in Julius Caesar, and it makes me think of the monologue that who's the other guy that's not Caesar and not Brutus? Cassius? That's a character, right?
Yeah, that sounds
right. It's Cassius. It makes me think of Cassius's monologue to Brutus. I think it's in the 10th scene when he's saying, like, why are we idolizing Caesar? I was going for a walk or something and Caesar fell behind, and then I realized he's just a normal person like us, but we've created this system where we've entrusted one human with so much power, even though it's just another person like me or like you. Why is that right? And what can we do about it? So, yeah, what are your thoughts on how this show examines that idea?
Well, I think that it's the goal of a few of them at least, right? Is to make a name for themselves, right? So celebrity, the idea of celebrity, the idea of being legendary or going down in history. that plays into at least some of their motives. And then I thought one of the things particularly interesting in Booth's situation was that kind of like the whole art imitating life, life imitating art, whatever, like he's doing this thing and he keeps talking about Caesar and Brutus. And it's almost like, you know how like they want to blame it on video games nowadays? Imagine if back when that had happened, if they'd been like, this Shakespeare, I don't know, this is a bad influence. This John Wilkes Booth, he was really emulating this Julius Caesar play. This is serious. I don't think we can have Shakespeare around anymore. So I just found that kind of interesting. Like he was really kind of emulating that, and he kept bringing it up and using it as part of his reasoning. And then it almost comes full circle, right? So he does that, and then we have Lee Harvey Oswald does what he does, and then Hinckley's, idolizing Lee Harvey Oswald, right? So like there's this like goings on of I don't know. It's interesting to me, this whole idea of celebrity and how it can influence the next one, and then eventually one of them does influence another one to do the same thing.
I think of like 4 of the assassins come to mind when we're talking about like toxic idols. Obviously, Fromm and Hinckley have a whole song about it. Unworthy of Your Love is like a perfect example of like having these people on a higher pedestal. And then Leon, like, he didn't really start thinking about assassinating McKinley until he had like that talk with Emma Goldman and wanted to do her proud. And then Couteau, who his idol was himself. So he just like thought he was like this high and mighty thing. It was like, yes, I'm going to walk up to the president and he's going to make me the ambassador for France. And he's just like gets laughed at and is like, well, how dare you? And
yeah, that's one of the ones that it feels weirdly relatable, I think, where like, not that I ever wanted to be the ambassador to France, but almost just trying to tell yourself that, yes, you can accomplish the thing that everyone's saying you can, but then when you actually try it, like if you walk into an equity audition, for example, then they're like, you don't belong here. You're not an equity member. But different from the ambassador to France, but there we go. What do we have here? Wow, this YouTube channel went from a play that claims to leave a legacy you need to make harder have children to you can become famous by shooting a famous person. Sondheim dug deep into legacy. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that you could buy a gun at Bass Pro Shop?
Oh, yeah. They got like an entire section.
I was going to say, that's pretty, like, that's... In my opinion, that should be the only place you could buy. I think that is the only place you could. Sounds like it should be. To Vince is saying that in Toronto. No, you can buy them. Walmart. There's like a little privately owned shop around every corner.
Shops. You got options.
You drive down the highway in like rural America, and there's just big billboards that are black and white. It just says guns.
Like, no, in Orlando, like every year there's like this big gun show that's like as big as like
in Orlando,
Comic-Con.
No, it's hilarious because we joke about this. Anytime we go to Orlando, there's this one billboard that's always a gun show, but it's updated. We always think, oh, that's leftover from last time.
But it's every year.
But it's new dates. No, but we come there more than once a year, and it's a new one. I swear it's every season. It's every season because every time we're there, the billboard has new dates. We're like, oh, that's the old one. Nope, that's new dates. There's new dates for that gun show.
Seeing your face is like, I am so concerned for my American friends.
Everyone froze and I missed it. I came back and we were laughing.
Yes, we're talking about the Orlando gun show sign where it's just the same sign but different dates every time we go.
That's a choice. That's a good job. Good job, Orlando. All right. Well, is there anything that you want to discuss about Assassins that we haven't before we go to the game?
Oh, the game.
Oh yeah, there's a game.
Game time?
Oh, yes.
Game time?
Game time? Okay.
Game time.
I need to find the game. Where'd the game go?
I lost
It was
the game.
really hard to come up with a game for this show.
I was gonna say, like, we've already discussed which
Yeah, I
presidents
mean-
have been assassinated. So, and if you make me say what years people were president, I am gonna kill you because I haven't had to do that since middle school. So.
That would have been a good one. No. Well, I thought about doing a game where I gave you a quote and was like, who said it, a president or an assassin? But then I looked into it and it was fairly obvious as to who said what. Like most of the assassin quotes were things like, I
Let
would
me
do
just
it
say,
again.
there's probably only one president whose quotes you could confuse with an assassin's quotes, and I'm just gonna leave it there.
Okay, well said. Well said. So anyway, you kind of touched on this already, Jeanette, but it's been an ongoing thing really since the 60s, equating the Kennedy assassination to the Lincoln assassination, and it's kind of fallen into this realm of urban legend of having similarities and differences between them. So I went to my be-all and end-all source after The Onion, Wikipedia, and pulled up the page telling me what was true and what was false. So I'm going to read to you a fact that links Lincoln and Kennedy and those events, and you have to tell me if it's true or if it's false or if it's an urban legend.
Yay.
Yes.
All right.
True, false, or urban legend, or
True or urban legend.
true or urban legend. Okay,
Yeah,
I was
true or
like, wait,
false,
I'm
basically.
so confused.
True or false.
It's like, what constitutes false and urban legend? Oh, wait, Sasquatch is here. That's urban legend.
Okay. Here we are. So the very first one. Oh, wait. Let me know when you're ready.
Oh, good. I'm just getting a little blanket. I'm a little chilly. Sorry.
Feel free to play along in the chat as well. I have to say that finding out the truth behind these things ruined maybe the fun is the wrong way to say it. Ruined the intrigue that I had when I first came across this list of facts, because the truth is never
the
as
list
interesting.
of facts is so fun when you first find it. Yes.
It is. I first found it. It was an email that was forwarded, I think, to my dad when emails were just becoming a thing and people
the
didn't know what the
forwarded
etiquette
emails.
was. Yeah, the
That was
forwarded
where
emails.
I first found out about these too.
Yeah. And in my memory, there were way more than what I found on the Wikipedia page, but I found 10. Here we go. So first, both of them were shot on a Friday. Lincoln and Kennedy, both shot on a Friday. True or false?
Okay, oh man. Heading out there a little bit. But I think I heard they were both shot on a Friday. Is that what I heard?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have anything to write things down, so I'm just going to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Okay. Let's go. 3, 2, 1. It's true.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay. Next. Both of the assassins, so Oswald and Booth, were born in 39. Obviously 100 years apart. 1839, 1939. Okay. Answers, please. In 3, 2, 1. False, false. We were looking for false. Correct.
Yeah.
Wow. You're both too good at this game. Yeah, Booth was actually born in 1838. So it was close. It was
That's
close.
interesting.
Isn't it? So close. Okay. Number 3.
Tell me that people lie on the internet.
I know, right? Kennedy had a secretary named Lincoln, and Lincoln had a secretary named Kennedy. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. True. Oh, our first divide. We were looking for false.
Yeah. It's
One
like
of them-
that's too coincidental.
No, one of them did. I can't remember which. I didn't write it down in my notes. I think it was Kennedy actually had a Lincoln secretary, but Lincoln didn't have a Kennedy. So there it is. Next, both of them were elected in the 60s. So 1860 and 1960. All right. Answers, please. In 3, 2. Is that a false? Is it true? We're divided again. We were looking for true.
You're kicking my
I
butt.
actually have a fun fact about, well, fun is relative, but between like 1820 and 1960, whatever president was elected in like that 20-year increment, so like 1820, 1840, whoever that was would die in office. Like
I remember that.
with,
yes.
Yeah, like started with William Harrison. He died in 30 days. Then like Zachary Taylor, and then Lincoln, then Garfield, then McKinley, and then Harding, I think it was, and then Roosevelt, and then Kennedy.
Who was it supposed to be after Kennedy? Who broke the streak?
Reagan.
Oh, okay, Reagan.
So that's why people were like freaking out. It's like, oh no, not again.
Wow.
You know, all the presidents in our lifetime have had a decent run. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're all still,
For better or
yeah,
for worse.
yeah, well, yeah. 2024. Don't let him back. Oh wait, no, he's in jail now, right?
2024.
No.
Let the right one in. No, unfortunately, he is very much not
Somehow,
in freaking
no.
jail. Okay.
It's like
Oh,
he's
well.
been indicted and he's been convicted of assault, but somehow not in jail.
He's in Twitter jail. For whatever that's worth.
We'll take what little I can get. Okay. Next. Booth ran from the theater and was caught in a warehouse. Oswald ran from a warehouse and was caught in a theater.
Like I said before we came onto the stream, I had a book about presidential assassinations. As a kid, I read way too much, and honestly, I should be on a watch list.
I don't know if you're gonna get super technical here. That's why I'm concerned. But okay.
I'm going from what Wikipedia told me. 3, 2, 1, go. We were looking for false.
It's a
Because-
farm.
What's that?
Because it's a farm.
Oh, okay. I'll give you the point. Yeah, because they
What?
considered it a barn and not a warehouse.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was
that's
a storehouse.
pathetic.
They did store things in it. It
Oh,
was a
okay.
storehouse. But
Yeah,
yes,
it's
I
not
hear
a
you.
warehouse.
Yeah.
They didn't
Flip
have
the page.
wares. Yeah. Okay. Next, both presidents were succeeded by someone named Johnson. Both presidents were succeeded by a Johnson.
Watching this fist bump me.
Boom.
This is tricky. Okay.
All right. Let's go. 3, 2, 1. It is true.
Andrew Johnson and Lyndon B. Johnson, LBJ.
I was about to say, can you tell me their names, and I'll give you a point. So I'll give you another
Oh,
point.
well, there you go. I only knew one of them.
Next, both presidents were shot in the head. Let's go. 3, 2, 1. Answers. True is correct. All right. Next, both of the assassins were Southerners. True or false? Both assassins were Southerners. 3, 2, 1, go.
I feel like this is a trick question.
It's false.
Yeah!
Wow.
Yeah, no. Booth was born in Maryland, apparently.
Yes, I knew
That
this
was,
was a trick question.
that was Southern during this freaking Civil War, dude. That was Southern at the time.
What?
No,
That's
so
Wasn't it a-
no.
Wasn't it a union state?
It's south of the
Yeah.
Mason-Dixon line.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Wikipedia
Maryland.
said it was a union state.
Maryland was considered
I don't know what that
Southern
means.
at the time. I thought Maryland was considered
Was Maryland
Southern.
Southern at the time?
Hang
I'll
on,
defer
let's-
to the
let's pull up
Americans.
the map.
Find the map. Find the map.
The map. So Maryland is north of Virginia, so no. It's sandwiched
Like,
between
no,
Virginia and
nowadays
Pennsylvania.
I would not consider it. No, it is. Maryland starts the Mason-Dixon line. It is the southern half of the Mason-Dixon line.
Okay, I'll give it to you. There we go.
Okay.
It
It
is.
was. I think Oswald born in New Orleans? Are they both?
He
Are
may
these
be-
like
he is.
Tinker J?
most people that are from freaking New Orleans, I don't want to actually say are from New Orleans.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Like, I'm like, no, not ours. No.
You can have them.
Yeah. You can keep Oswald and Britney Spears. It's fine. Go ahead.
Britney's from there?
Well, she's from Abita Springs, Louisiana.
Oh, we love Britney Spears. Justice for Britney. Well, yeah. You also got Princess
She's been through a
Tiana.
lot. Leave Britney alone.
Yeah, our only good people are free. Well, we have Ellen DeGeneres, I guess, even though she's canceled now. Yeah, she's canceled.
I'd take Britney over Ellen.
Yeah, out of all the people who are canceled, like other people have done worse things.
She's the least canceled.
Yeah. Like toxic workplace. We've all had one.
Yeah. But yes, Leo Harvey Oswald is from New Orleans. Unfortunately.
There we go. Yeah, so it's like you're connecting them now too, Jeanette. You're part of the mythology.
Great.
Welcome to the pantheon of people from New Orleans. You're in good company.
Next, they were both elected to Congress in 46.
Oh. I don't know anything about Congress.
Neither do I.
I
barely know what that means.
They were both elected to Congress in 46.
18 and 19, respectively.
Okay. All right.
It's like, actually, it's 2046. It's going to get weird.
Right? Answers, please, in 3, 2, 1. We were looking for true.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was like, was Kennedy ever in Congress? I didn't even know Kennedy was in Congress.
All right, and final question of the main round. Both assassins' names, like all three names, are composed of 15 letters.
Oh, God.
So to spell and count now.
I can do one or the other.
Okay.
Answers, please, in 3, 2, 1. We were looking for true.
I told you I can only do one at a time.
All right, so the current point tally, it's very close. Jeanette, you have 7. Chris, you have 9. Now, Jeopardy style, how many points do we want to wager for the bonus question? It's a tricky bonus question.
Uh-oh.
Is it still about Lincoln and Kennedy?
No.
Oh. Is it about Sondheim?
No. Well, it's about it's about Lincoln or Kennedy. It's not about the coincidences that bind them.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then I'll go all in.
Okay.
Cool. Why not?
Go for glory. All in.
Okay.
Yeah.
What play was Lincoln at?
Oh.
I know this.
I'm going to make this up. Only based off of clue you gave me earlier.
Did I give you a clue? Oh, interesting. Okay. I could have given a clue.
I don't know why it's the first of those types of plays that I'm thinking of.
Probably should have given
There's
a
a
clue.
million of them. Don't know why.
Yeah. Let's start with Jeanette's answer.
I have the importance of being earnest.
Okay, the important.
That is not right, but it's the first thing that came to my head.
Just imagine Lady Bracknell comes out and then all of a sudden, boom. Okay. Chris?
So, John Wilkes Booth was very familiar with this show. I'm about to go on a whole tangent, so if I'm wrong, it's going to be hilarious.
Okay.
But John Wilkes Booth knew this play quite well. He knew that there was a line in this show that always got rapturous laughter. The line was, "You sock-dazzling old man trap." So he planned it so that he would sneak into Lincoln's booth and kill him when that was happening to cover up the sound of the gunshot. And the name of the play was My American Cousin.
Ah, yes.
Was it?
Yes, it was. Because when you said that, it reminded me.
I think it was Our American Cousin.
Not close enough.
Run. Our American Cousin.
It's Our American Cousin.
Yeah, by Tom Taylor. So You're both tied with 0. Everyone's a loser.
Yeah.
Everybody's got the right to be so different. Don't be mad, life's not as bad as it seems. Think of what you want and what. I can't remember. Yay, everyone loses.
Yay.
How appropriate.
Like, I think I just get a point for everything else.
Oh, well done, well done. All right. Closing thoughts, anything else that you want to talk about with this musical or with American history?
Oh, about American history. No, yeah, no. It was fantastic. Like I said, I'll probably seek out other iterations of this just because I'd love to see another take on it. Although I feel like this was a really good one.
Yeah, this is the bar for me, this production. And even this recording. There are 3 cast recordings. There's the original, this production, as well as the one from last year off Broadway. And still, this is the pinnacle for me. It doesn't get better. Maybe one day it will. In my production with the balloons. Chris?
Seek out art that challenges you. That's the best thing you can do.
Well said, well said. Brilliant. All right. It's that special time where we sign off and you tell all the people all the things that you want them to know about you. Woo!
Hey, so I am Tinker J. You can find me here on Teacup for One. You can find me on We Like Theme Parks. We have a new round of Villains League coming up, so you should keep an eye out for that on Thursday. What's that? Tomorrow? Yes,
Yeah.
tomorrow. You should check out the new episode, New Villains League. Me and Greg, and check out what happens.
Brilliant. Thank you.
So I'm not on YouTube anymore unless something cool happens. You never know. Never say never. But you can follow me on Instagram at Chris_from Orlando. I might start retweaking that to be more of like my actor page, essentially. If you happen to be in the Orlando area, see Counseling Clause at Orlando Fringe. If not, just follow me on Instagram and see the shows I'm in.
Woo! And if you're watching, this is my channel. My name is Matt, and I have 2 degrees. Yeah. Watch us once a week for fun marathons like this. They don't all get this dark and sad about the state of the world. Next week, well, actually, no, next week's probably will as well. Because to answer Bob's question, there is one last Sondheim show for next week. My personal favorite show of all time. Not just Sondheim, and not even just favorite show. My favorite, piece of writing ever. We're doing Into the Woods next week. I love it so, so much. And I can't wait to talk about it. So next week is Into the Woods week. Following that, we have, I don't know if it's time for me to announce what we're doing for June yet. I think I'll hold off one more week. But the June marathon, trust me, is going to be a lot of fun. It's similar to last year when we did the Pirates marathon. It's something that's very franchisey, flashy, fun, and the timing works out perfectly. That's all I'll say. So until then, friends, join us next week. And in the meantime, watch all of my videos about The Little Mermaid because I got to see it early. I got to do 2 videos about it. And I'm trying to grow the channel. And what better way to do that than by talking about the Mermaid movie? So watch the videos. If you're watching this, there's 9 of you. Please like it. That's it. Thank you. My name's Matt. 2 degrees. Teacup for One. Ha! How do I end this?